r/ask Reddit. What is the stupidest thing you thought as a child? Not me, but my son. He didn't want us to get a new TV because he liked the shows on the old one. To be fair, my parents have said similar things about their computer and email. Art son is your dad. I was told that God lived up in the sky, for some reason. The highest thing I could imagine was the pipe sticking out of the neighbor's roof, so I thought God lived in the pipe. I have a friend who teaches. A kid asked her when they give money at church, how does a church get it to God? My friend jokingly said they tie it to a balloon and let it float up to heaven. The kid said he was going to ask her pastor if she could watch next time they did it. My friend teaches high school juniors. I asked my preacher where the collection money went and he simply replied, "It goes back to God." So I thought that he would burn the money after every church service, and the smoke carried it back up to God. When I was 3 or 4, I asked my dad where babies come from. I got whole sperm plus egg equals baby, which made some kind of sense. Then I asked where the sperm comes from, and he said it comes from the daddy's penis. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I stopped asking questions there and had a mental picture of my dad peeing through a tea strainer and catching a little flopping tadpole, which he would then stuff into my mom's vagina. It took a few years before I was disabused of that notion, probably on the playground at school. I too was told the basics at a very young age, but I had absolutely no concept of sex. So I just imagined my parents mixing all this stuff up in a sink to make a baby. I remember asking my mother what those pills were on her night table. She told me that they were birth control pills, and if she stopped taking them she'd have a baby. Years later, as we kids got to the age where we started to really learn about reproduction, I was still sure that there was no sex involved. Just stop taking those pills and voila, baby. I had seen photos of some sperm cells and thought that their shape was pretty similar to a dong head, gland's penis. This made me think that the dong head is a sperm cell and every man has one sperm cell at a time. Whenever you have sexual intercourse, the dong head just passes into the woman and your penis is left there without a head. I had a similar notion that each testicle represented one child, i.e., 2 kids and a guy was done. Seems I didn't think too deeply about the implications of families with 3+ kids. I think I was a low wattage bulb. This brings back weird memories of when I was in elementary school and got into an argument with a girl over whether girls had penises or vaginas. I thought that every song that played on the radio was being performed somewhere live, and when you turned up the volume the singer would sing louder at her venue. Oh, this but double for me because my grandfather was a radio presenter when I was a kid, so I'd hear my papa on the radio and know he was in a room somewhere. I thought there was a band there with him cranking out the hits. It didn't help that in true grandfather style he encouraged the belief. In the very first decades of radio this actually happened. Live shows were more common. I noticed that I was able to jump off of the playground and land on my feet and be perfectly fine. So my child mind immediately decided I was a superhero and could land from any height and be perfectly fine. I went to my friend's house, jumped off his roof, and the next thing I remember is crying until my mom picked me up. I thought so too, but I jumped out of the back of a moving vehicle because I saw one of my friends and my parents didn't stop the truck. It didn't go so well. Narrator. And they never saw their parents again. I used to think that the money offering collected at church would be put into a huge cannon to be shot up to heaven for Jesus. I thought the preacher burned it every Sunday evening and the smoke carried it up to God. That if 2 artists made a song together it must mean they are a couple. I thought Donnie and Marie were a married couple for so long. Found out they were siblings and was like EWWWW. But they're married. I couldn't fathom how thermoses worked. People told me that they keep hot things hot and cold things cold. But I was like, how in the duck does it know whether the thing inside it is hot or cold so as to keep it that way? Took me many a year to figure that out. I used to believe I could save up my hots and my colds to use them later. For example, if it was really hot outside, I would whisper, "Save up all these hots." Then when I would get cold, I would summon the extra hots by whispering, "Give me all my hots." And it was supposed to make me warmer. That's cute, lol. I thought that anytime any woman went to the hospital, it was to have a baby. My 98-year-old great-grandmother was in the hospital and all I wanted to know is when the baby was gonna get here. This is really common with young kids. I think they are shown hospitals as the place where babies are born instead of the place where sick hurt people go to make them less afraid. Sex was just making out with no clothes on. I feel like we all thought this at one point. I remember one time in like grade 2 or 3, a girl kissed a boy on the lips during lunch, a little peck, and when we got back to class, someone told the teacher that 2 students had sex in the playground. I didn't really know much better at that age, but I just remember the teacher being shocked. I met someone who thought sleeping together literally just meant sleeping in the same bed, and freaked out that she would get pregnant when on a school trip they required people to share beds. She was 14. Everyone on the trip was a girl. This is why sex ed is important. This was me at age 13 without the pregnancy idea. My mom asked me if my boyfriend and I were sleeping together and I answered we didn't have enough time together to go take naps. I thought catching on fire as an adult is common because of all the fire safety in elementary and them beating stop, drop, and roll into our heads. And quicksand. I thought it would play a much larger role in my life. Right? It seemed like every single movie and TV show growing up had some episode where someone had to escape quicksand. And I was like, gosh, I better be prepared for when I inevitably fall in quicksand as an adult. That the eject button on my dad's car would send me flying through the roof. Now I imagine a dad doing that when he has gotten enough of the kid, just push a button and send him off the roof. He did threaten to when my siblings and I got annoying. I thought that oral sex was a slang term for French kissing, and therefore anal sex must mean 2 people standing back to back, rubbing butts. I thought oral sex was talking about sex, not dirty talk, but more of a discussion about whether or not the people involved would have sex. Then once they had sorted out the question and negotiated stuff like whether or not kissing or hugging would be involved, they would either have sex or arrange to have it a bit later on. I figured people did this because sex sounded very weird anyway and I totally couldn't see the point. So it would make sense that they make sure the other person wanted to as well. When we were little, my twin sister was convinced that chicken, beef, etc. was produced by vacuuming the meat out of the living animal. The animal would then walk around all wobbly and meatless until more meat grew back. This one makes me laugh at the idea of the wobbly animals. I thought Santa hated me because he didn't give me presents on Christmas. I'm Jewish and my parents didn't want me to be that kid who told his classmates that Santa doesn't exist, so I ended up believing in Santa until I was about 8, when I saw 2 mall Santas get into a fight in the parking lot of the mall. Great way to figure out Santa isn't real. I figured out Santa wasn't real when I got a She-Ra crystal castle and no She-Ra doll. I tried to jam a Barbie in the castle and broke it, followed by an epic meltdown and the castle being taken away. I told my parents Santa wasn't real because he wouldn't have made that mistake. My powers of deduction peaked when I was 4. That the sun never set, and the night sky was just a giant black tarp with holes poked into it, and the sunlight shining through made the stars. Don't let flat earthers see this. That's not far from their beliefs. I thought people died by blowing the candles on their 100 years party. I just thought that people died when they turned 100. My mom knew this person who was either 98 or 99, and so I said, so she's either going to be 99 or she's going to die, and my mom agreed. This is really kind of haunting yet sweet. I support it. All dogs were male. All cats were female. I also always thought that, but at the same time I knew there were different species, so I always wondered how they reproduced. My stepdad told me if I ate too much chicken I would have feathers under my arms like grandma. Totally bought it. Your grandma has feathers under her arms? Bingo wings. When I was a kid, I thought ice cream sandwiches were literally 2 pieces of bread with ice cream in the middle. I really wanted one. I went to ask my mom if I could have one while she was napping and she half-consciously said we didn't have any. I said, that's okay, I'll make one. She said nothing. I quickly learned ice cream sandwiches were not, in fact, 2 pieces of white bread with a spoonful of vanilla ice cream in the middle. I thought this too. I'd only heard of an ice cream sandwich in a Babysitter's Club book, and it's the obvious conclusion. Funnily enough, this was the time when my favorite ice cream was the Monaco bar, which is in fact an actual ice cream sandwich. We just don't call them that here. My address was 25,029. My parents told me that represented my mom's age, 25, and dad's age, 29, when they got married, and the 0 was for how many kids they had at the time. As a little kid I thought that rule, mom's age of, kids' dad's age, applied to all home addresses. I would always see houses with addresses like 05785 or something and wonder how a 5-year-old married an 85-year-old and already had 7 kids. I believed this for far longer than I'm happy to admit. When I was around 6, my mom's grandmother passed away and my dad's father passed away. I told my mom that her grandfather should marry my dad's mom so they wouldn't be lonely. Went to my aunt's funeral and asked everyone when we'd see her again. There was a Skittles commercial where they put some Skittles in the ground and they grew into a Skittles tree. I tried growing a Skittles tree at the park for about 3 years before my family moved. Everyone knows it takes 4 years to grow a Skittles tree. That there was someone who sat behind a couple hundred computer screens and controlled every traffic light in the city. I wasn't the sharpest bulb in the bag of hammers. At one point I believed that the people controlling the traffic lights were inside the poles. I didn't put a lot of thought into that one. Sometime around age 11 I heard about strap-ons, but I never saw a photo and was confused as to what they were or how they worked. My assumption was that it was a dildo, but instead of going outward I thought it went in. I thought women were walking around with a dildo inside of them while just shopping or whatever. For a few years whenever I saw a woman in public smiling I thought that maybe they had a dildo strapped in them. They make those too. They're just called something different. When I was about 6 I used to think sex was just a hug because my parents called it a special cuddle and I knew it had something to do with the balls. So I thought when a man and women hugged, the balls went through the man's skin and into the woman's body. Then either came back or regrew. I'm a little fuzzy on that detail, but I concluded that if 2 men hugged they would just swap balls, so I punched myself in the balls. Went and hugged my brother for the ultimate prank. I asked him, "Do your balls hurt?" and he was like, "No." So realized I had just punched myself in the balls for no reason. I told him about this the other year and we laugh about it, but he is still very confused. Edit. Format. I thought it was illegal to have the inside lights on in the car while someone was driving. A lot of people thought this. Our parents just didn't like us having the lights on while they were driving. Seriously. I used to think people in high school were grown-ups until I got there. Then same thing about college. And now I know adulting is just faking it and acting like you know what you're doing. Well, I thought for years the Smurfs were green. We lived in communist Poland and our once color TV turned into a mostly green-white TV over time. I was shocked, and a teenager, when I realized the Lil Duckers are a different color. There was an old Cartoon Network ad here in the States where a voiceover asks, "Why are the Smurfs blue?" and one of them says, "Are not, we're green. Adjust your TV." People need to love each other real hard to make a baby. That would definitely make a better world. My dad told me that Tiger Woods had a brother called Lion Woods. That chocolate milk came from brown cows. Remember that one commercial where the farmer pours a bottle of chocolate syrup in a white cow's mouth and he spins her around until she turns brown? It makes a lot of sense in kid logic. I thought Britney Spears wrote a song about my doctor. I'm not that innocent translated to I'm not Dr. Addison. Like, okay Britney, I get it. You aren't my doctor, lol. Aerosmith's Janie's Got a Gun was popular when I was a kid. My mom was dating a man named Jamie. I assumed the song was about him and he had a gun. I was terrified of him. He was also a heroin addict and found out later that he did in fact have a gun. So I believed all songs on the radio were about people I knew. As a child I thought actors would really die in movies. And how stupid is this? They can only be in one film in their life. I didn't think this. But I did believe that when a character was both a child and an adult in the same movie, it was the same actor the whole time. So any flashback scenes had to have been filmed decades in advance. Figured making a movie took a really long time. Better hope that 6-year-old still wants to be an actor when they're 35. First time I went into a circus, one of the circus guys jokingly said that it was forbidden to take pictures and they would throw whoever did to the lions. For some reason I thought the guy said it was forbidden to laugh. So we ended up leaving early because I started to cry when I saw my family laughing. I thought that in the state of Pennsylvania all buildings were made from pencils. I'm so happy you thought this. I thought all the houses in Canada were made out of cans because why else would you name a place Canada? I cried when my family visited and saw the houses were normal. I don't know if I was just really dumb or overly creative and in my own world. So back in the 60s, there was a period where people were buying baby alligators as pets. Seemed like every store everywhere had baby alligators. Well, people quickly tired of them and started flushing them down the toilets. In big cities, news stories about alligators living in the sewers proliferated. We lived close to NYC and frequently went there to visit family. My 2 older brothers convinced me, I was about 7 that the alligators in the sewers would get me if I wasn't careful. Having seen the news stories already, I totally believed this. So every time we went to NYC, I would circle around every sewer grate. I can only imagine what my parents thought of this. Good times. Capital I. My mom gave me the talk far too young and she used very vague terms. That is, just privates. So I thought just one of the dad's balls went in and it grew in the mom like those little dinosaur pills. By this logic I figured I could only have 2 kids. My dad must have started with 3 balls and has an empty bag now. And the Steve Martin from Cheaper by the Dozen must have had a damn trash bag of a sack. Food and drinks went down separate paths when swallowed, and when you choked on something that went down the wrong pipe it was because food went down the drink pipe or vice versa. For my entire life until I just started high school I believed that bless you was actually bless you because of how people pronounce it when they are sneezing. Black people are made out of chocolate. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cuss you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.